Good afternoon and welcome. This lecture we will be adding a couple of more components to the level so that we have the game a little bit more ready for when we start adding the blueprints in. So the next concept we'll be going over is quite an important one. This will be something called a player start. So we can go over here to the basic panel and we can drag a player start into the world. And all this is really is it just represents the location which a player will be spawned. And this will only work if you have the game mode set up to spawn a specific character into the world. And this is something I will be covering a lot more when we go through the game mode section. But for now, just know that we will need one of these, and it will become very relevant what it does at a later point. For the time being, I'm just going to give this a location, and we want to make this 4,500 on the X, minus 3,500 on the Y, and 0 on the Z. So we now have a point in the world which Unreal knows that we want a player to be spawned. Okay, so that is the first part done, is our player spawn. So again, just a location for the chosen player of the game mode to be spawned. The alternative to this would be to manually take a blueprint of your player that you're going to use and drag them into the world. But you'll normally see this is the chosen method. The only other thing we want to do as well is down here, if we select the player start, we want to change this auto receive input from disabled to player 0. So because this is a single player game, we will simply say that take the first player you find, which should be the only player, and provide that as the character the player will be controlling. In multiplayer games this will be a lot more complex, we're not going to go into that. So all we need to know is that it will automatically receive input from the first and only player in the game. Okay, the next thing we want is a camera. So at the moment we're viewing through this one. We want a proper game camera in the project. And rather than trying to search for it over here, what we'll do is we'll just type in the word camera in this bar. And again, we just drag that into the world. And this can then be provided as our default camera. And in a very similar way, rather than being automatically disabled, we're just going to change this to player 0 as well, so it will be defaulted as the main game camera rather than having a new one spawned when the game starts, which is currently what's happening if we hit play. This just gives us a bit more control over where it's going to be and how it will affect the world. And then in a very similar way, all we want to do is change the location, so we will make this 0, 0 and 0. So I'm going to put the camera at the 0 point of the world, so right at the center, and we will be placing the objects in relation to the distance from the camera that we want it to be, rather than the other way around. And finally, this will wrap up the level setup section of the course. What we want to do is make a bounding box that the player and the enemies will not be able to leave. So we're going to be able to view it in the editor, which is what we're doing now, but in the game it will be invisible. The way we're going to do this is we will drag in a single cube, and what we'll do with this cube is we will place this at 4,500 on the x-axis, minus 4,500 on the y, and then minus 180 on the z. And this will be off somewhere in the distance over there. So it looks quite far away, but this will actually make up part of our screen. So if we select the camera, you get a small demo window down here, and you should just be able to see it there. So the next thing we want to do is it's not quite big enough, so we will make this in height, which is the z-axis, we'll make this 60, and we'll make it a little bit thicker as well, we'll make it 5. So now if we look at this, it's taller and wider, so that will stop the player from going back out of the screen. I'm going to select this and Control W, and pretty much everything can stay the same. We just want to take the minus value off of that, so it's a positive, and then we can see that's now on the right side of the screen. So that's stopping the enemies from leaving, that's stopping the player from leaving that side. And then we want 2 more of these cubes, so the next one will be for the top. So we need to change the scaling of this a little bit rather than rotating it. I found this a bit easier, so we want this to be 100 on the y-axis, and we can make that 1 on the z. And then we just want to move this up, and I know the exact points should be 170 would be fine to put that in the middle, and 2460 will make it at the top of the screen as we have it at the moment. And then we just copy this one more time, we can put a minus on this value, which will put it at the bottom of the screen. And then if we just look at our camera one last time, we now have a nice box blocking in our world, so we cannot leave the screen from any of those axes. And we'll leave that as it is for now. The only thing we want to change is if we select all of these, so we can shift select all of the cubes, and we will make sure that under the rendering we hide the actor in game. So if we press play, we can't see them. So that's all it is. So that's done, that's set up, and we have our level ready for use with when the blueprints are implemented. So I'll leave that there, and I will see you in the next lecture.